Once you use it, I'll give you time to take a picture and try them out before I click walking towards my computer. And I do. Cool. So, Phil for volunteering and coming here and sharing some of his expertise in developing Node web APIs and deploying them to Firebase. I'm really excited about this one. And this is the first we want to put together. And talk a little bit about what the plan is here.
Sure. So, as you know, probably know, meetup.com is going to be paid now, right? It is. And we're thinking, okay, we can build our own. A joke, but we are kind of today is going to be the first meetup this series where we're going to have always two libraries to compare both codes. So we're going to have probably something like one different feature using different one compared to other.
Yeah, so we're not going to have December, but we are going to come back in January. Like Bruno said, it's each meetup is going to be two different frameworks, and then we're going to have each one of them building a certain aspect of the .com like website using, and then hopefully the API that Phil shows us how to build today deployed to Firebase. And what's cool about this is everything is going to be publicly available, so everyone can try it out for themselves. So between now and then the next video, if you want to try building a front end for the API and then share it with the rest of the group. Sponsors for today, site plan. Chris, you want to talk a little bit about what y'all do and some of the jobs?
Mostly about the opening positions.
There you go.
Right? So my name is Chris Means. I'm a service engineer here at SitePlan. So SitePlan is a company that specializes in the multifamily property space. Basically means we provide maintenance and resident service solutions. So we've been hosting Orlando.js for a while. The great benefits of that is we can post our job board, and there are some positions here for this group. We're looking for a senior front-end developer, back-end developer, senior back-end developer, QA analyst. So if you know anybody that's interested, or if you're interested, feel free either here on the ODev Slack or at jobs@sitePlan. Please take a look, and if you want to follow us on Instagram.
Awesome, thank you. And another one of our sponsors, our most recent sponsor, have put together us. Basically, if you visit this URL, atlantic.net/Orlando-JS, excuse me, you get 1 year free VPS plus. /Orlando-JS. I believe somebody from Atlantic that's going to be here later with some flyers with all this code that you can check it out. And then another one of our sponsors. So if you want to learn pretty much anything in the tech space, .com, you can get a free trial. You can try some of the learning resources. There's a lot of cool them too. I help produce some of their questions. Feel free to ask me. I'll be more than happy to give you a demo of what it is. And have
cool. That one is
okay.
Because that one, sorry, y'all missed it. Because that one, if you didn't register. Hardware Intel. Okay, so my name is Brian. I'm running a conference here, well, not here physically, actually at the Abbey. Those of you know where the Abbey is, it's really close by. Right here downtown, called Flashback Conference. It's in February. And the idea behind this is all front end focused, but with a little dash of web history thrown in. When you learn something new, you learn a bit about how it got to be that way. And I just wanted to show you. Anybody heard of Kyle Simpson? He's well known in the JavaScript community. He did the whole You Don't Know JS series. We've got people from Technologies, Stitch Fix, Microsoft, Adobe, Netlify, and so on, all speaking. It's 2 days, and it's only $149 right now if you grab the super early birds while they're still there. So just go to Flashback, and you can.
Cool. And then for those of you that but not sure if you want to spend, it's not a big of an investment, but I urge you to just try ask your employer, right? Most of the time, what's the worst that can happen? They can say no, right? But what if they say yes?
If anybody works for a company that has a number of 5 or more, I'm happy to work out something, wiggle room, because this is like early bird, super early bird. But if it's a group, I'll work with them. So
Cool.
if you want to speak to your employees.
Awesome. And then last one before we get started. Next week. Yes, this is like as official as you can get from like the official like React kind of team. I believe David is going to be the instructor for that course. Cool. So if y'all don't know David, you should just say hi to David, or State Machine. David will just magically and explain to you what it is. Yeah, we have. If you go to this URL, I can post it to /Orlando, and then query string Orlando-JS. You can get $125 or $100 discount. It's next week, 2-day workshop. Yeah, I think that's it. Do we have anyone know of anything we should announce? Any event tickets? Anyone else hiring? No, we're good. All right, we're going to get started. I'm going to switch over here and hand it. All right, cool. Oh yes, I'm sorry. So before we do that today, so before we start the talk, we're gonna have Dwayne show his side project, really cool stuff, and then after that we're gonna have Phil present, and then we're gonna have Q&A, and then end with. We're not gonna do lightning talks today because.
So I just wanted to kind of test with you guys. I just recently got a job at Nextflow. I'm a JavaScript developer advocate. So I get to play around and show a project I made. And so what Nextflow do, they do telecommunications. So I remember they're like one of the first people to do like internet telephone. So you instead you get rid of your regular telephone, you just have like a bond internet. And so now they expanded, and so to where it's like a real-time, and so it's the ever thing where it's Pirates versus Ninja. Like get you guys to. That's not it. That's the presenter thing.
Ooh.
I sent it to you. Oh,
This is it.
yeah, there we go. Yeah, so I did it on Glitch because I figured it'd be something cool. You mix it if you want to. And so now you'll be able to either text or call. The number's going to pop up on the screen at some point, hopefully. Or text. That's one. It's real time as we're doing it. If it hopefully will. It's working. There we go. UK also because we have office. Either way, just give it a call or text it. And, so we'll. One for ninjas, two for pirates. And if you call, it's like a little automated voice too that also speaks. Oh, there we go. Okay.
How did you hook that up with the phone?
Well, we have phone numbers through Nextflow.
Okay.
And so I listen for incoming calls.
Yeah.
And I send a custom event that will update depending on what you chose.
Yeah.
To whether.
Nice. Awesome.
Stickers and stuff. We'll talk to you afterwards. Thank you.
See if this works. Let's roll.
That's a little better. I'll blow up this text, but. All right, my name is Phil Palmieri. Hi. I'm in Node government stuff, and one of the cool things I get to do is work on. So most of our things are on AWS and that one, but on my personal things, I've been moving over to Firebase for a lot of either APIs or using the doing React front ends or mobile database. So what we're doing this time is we're going to use Node in the cloud functions in Firebase, and then tie the cloud functions to Firestore and database to work. So before I get started, just so I can get, has everybody here used Node at all, or okay, cool. So I'll have to do two. Auth in it. I'll show you some auth as we wrap up, but that'll take more than time we have to wrap in auth and validation and everything. So this is just to get you going. All right, so in Firebase, basically you can create a project, and I can do this I want to show you how to set it up. So this is the Meet demo project we'll do in a minute, but what I'm going to do is just to walk through how to start a project up, totally free. All you got to do is have a Google account and then go to firebase.google.com. And we'll start a project here, and I'm just going to call this throwaway project. We're not going to use analytics. If you were building a mobile app, you could integrate A/B testing and analytics and all those stuff, but for right now, we're just going to disable it. And it'll take about a minute, maybe a little less. While this is going, the other thing you have to do is you have to install the Firebase command line tools, which is on their site. I'll show you a link for it. I think you can do it with npm. All right, so project is ready. All right, so here's my project. Right out of the box, you get authentication, databases, you get storage, hosting functions, which are kind of like, think of them like lambdas, if you're familiar with AWS. You can tie into some machine learning tools. So what does this get you? So if we're going to do a static website, under hosting, you just basically enable a hosting account. If you're under storage, think of that kind of like an S3 bucket where you can have long-time storage to connect things to. And then databases, which we're going to use. I'm going to go ahead and initialize one. There's Firestore, and then there's real-time database. For this example, I'm going to show you Firestore. It's just a little simpler to kind of get your head around. It's just straight up document storage. Real-time basically works almost identically, except that it's socket layer and it's actually real-time. So if you have two clients connected to it, they see updates in real time. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start this in test mode just because I don't care. We're going to throw it away in a minute. Central's fine. All right, while that's going, I'm going to switch back over to the command line. All right, so I already created a folder here called Meet Demo Live, which is just an empty folder. So you see it totally empty. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and initialize it just by saying Firebase init. Can you see the bottom of the screen? I can try to scroll up. Basically, it's just an interactive tool. I've already authed with the Firebase CLI, which won't do on a live stream. And because I'm authenticated, it can see all my projects. So I'm initializing this folder to the project we just created. So I'm going to say I want a database. I want Firestore, and I want functions, and I want hosting. I don't care about storage at the moment. I'm going to say use an existing project, and this is going to be the throwaway project because it reads it. Firestore and rules, just defaulting everything for the moment. I want JavaScript. No, I don't want ESLint right now. Do you want to install with npm? Yep. Basically, I'm gonna cut this short because I already did this on the other folder. I don't want to make sure we have time. Yeah. All right, public directory is gonna be public. I do routes to go to my functions, not my. All right. So inside the on my Firebase RC. Is my rules. This is where the key is. So inside the functions folder, functions go for basically the serverless stuff. Static. It's static hosted. So if I look at my public folder, you can see I've got a folder. And if I look in my functions folder, you can see I've got a getignore, my index.js, node modules folder because it installed my package and my package log. So think of these as separate entities, but they're kind of living under the same umbrella. All it did was do a bunch of grunt work for me to set it up and connect everything. All right.
So real quick,
Yeah.
if you wanted to run, like just fire up the server locally right now, could you?
Yeah, I'm going to show you that right now. So I'm going to. Any other questions on this initial setup before I jump back to the existing code? I was going to kind of try and live code this all, but I've tried to trying to fit like an 8-hour hack day into about 30 minutes. So I'm going to jump back and then we can look at it and I'll kind of explain where things are and we can maybe make a few new endpoints and make a few changes that Carlos had wanted. So, all right. So in my demos, meet demo. So this is the actual app that was running a minute ago. This has the Firebase, the RC. There's two parts here, and when this is over, don't try and not have to worry about memorizing. I'll send you links to some of the reference material where these are, and some of the stuff you probably wouldn't just figure out. You have to Google for a long time. All right, so the Firebase JSON file is basically a config. So it's telling you where it is, if you want to run any pre-deploy scripts, where your public folders are, and this right here is the key. This is the key for the serverless stuff. There's all different ways you can do the wildcarding. What this is basically telling Firebase now is that anything that hits this URL just redirected to my app, the app namespace. So that app is an exports from my functions folder. And you can put as many as you want to. So if you want to have 10 different sub apps, you want to do your own little micro modules, you can export them all and then redirect to it. What we're doing here is I'm going to actually put an express front end on the node side and then handle the routing this way. So. And then under Firestore rules, this is important too. Right now, I've just got the default, which is a terrible deal. I'll show you a real one in a minute. The way Firestore works is that, if you think of like MySQL, Postgres, you would give a user permission to a table or to a database. So you can give them you can give a certain user rights to certain things. The document stores and the way they handle permissions are different, where you basically give a user permission to its own space. So there's collections, there aren't really tables, so there's collections, but inside the collection you can interweave permissions based on your user ID. So if you add auth, you say, everybody can write to the comments table, but only a person with an auth ID that matches the comments auth ID can, edit or delete it. So it's a little awkward as you read up on all the links to it. So right now for this demo, there is no permission. It's just totally open, and hopefully nobody firebombs it at the moment. All right, and then so in public, same thing, index.html, which we're not using, and then functions. So inside my functions folder is this index. And this right here, I cheat sheet because I never remember the command. There's a couple commands you can do, but this basically will run. If I go ahead and run this, so if I run this command, so basically saying Firebase emulator start and use Firestore functions and hostings. And what this will do is it'll set up a mock database, mock URL, and run the functions all kind of in their own little environment locally, so you can do testing. The database interface doesn't really exist, so it's kind of hard, but if you just want to play around with it, you can. So I'm going to go ahead and start them up under this tab. Okay, so now all my emulators are started. So I have that little project, the API I showed you a minute ago, is now running totally locally, and I didn't have to set anything up. I don't have to set up any of my Docker. I don't have to do anything like that. It's just kind of automagical. So I'm going to go ahead and hit 8080. I'm sorry, 5000. So here's my Firebase 5000. But see, because I didn't put a root route, there's nothing there to do. But if I send this over to /API, I'll get the here, which is the return from the base. And then if I do API/events, I get nothing back because it's a mock database and there's nothing in it right now. So what we'll do is I'm going to go ahead and create, I'm going to kind of walk through some of the node code. Totally stop me if this is, I'm making assumptions that you've seen Express or you've seen kind of this before. So if you haven't, stop me and I'll go through it. Firebase is a little interesting because if you wanted to build a mobile app or you want to build a web app, you don't really need an API layer. You don't need a REST API. You don't need to build your own backend for 90% of cases, because the SDKs, you can do the socket connections and the real-time connections to Firebase. So like I have an app I'll show you later that's totally React front end. There's no back end at all. The back end is just the Firebase SDK. And it handles the database, handles all the creation. So, all right, so let me go into here. So this is the index that it built. This is the one file I have in my functions folder. And basically what I'm doing is, all I'm doing is requiring the Firebase functions library, the Firebase admin library. There's two Firebase SDKs, is the Firebase SDK and the Firebase admin. The admin you need to use if you're running stuff server side on the functions in your account, because you can just inherit down here. You can just inherit your credentials. You don't have to worry about PEM files or keys or anything like that. If you're using the traditional SDK, you'd have to put in your API key and everything else. Next thing to do is I'm just pulling in Express, and I'm pulling in body parser, which is an NPM package that's letting me basically pull out post. So when I'm posting to the API, I can just read that data out, not have to do all kind of munging with it. So, all right. So here's how it flows, and I tried to keep it all linear. This code is up on GitHub too. It just tried to be linear, so I didn't want to modularize everything and make it confusing. So I was like, here's a flow, 3 things, you can see what everything does in one place. These are the Express middlewares. So basically I'm just saying use a body parser. And then this say on my get, so I'm telling app, which is my express, that when somebody sends a get request, which is a generic call, to /API namespace, the first layer, I'm just going to send it here. So basically just sending here, which is what we see here. So that's that. If I change this to and I refresh it, so it's there. So that's all that is. If you want to send, again, this is getting deeper into Express. So if you wanted to send JSON back or anything else, you could say res.json instead of res.send. And all right, so here's where it starts going. So I'm going to start with the posting first because there's nothing to see yet. So down on posting, so these are I'm going to pull out the user's email address. And again, don't do this in production. This is just to get the point across. I'm going to add that user to the user's collection. And then I return back the ID. So that's sure, there's no authentication, no validation. It's just get the data, put it in the database, come back with the ID. The way this works, so let me go to my, go back here. So I'm going to go ahead and curl over to, go back here, 5,000. So we go to API/users. I'm going to send the data. It's just going to be email equals fill that. Oops. So I'm going to send a post to my local version of users with the data email equals fill it up. And that should give me back not what I'm looking for.
Users.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Doing it live. So boom, there's my user. So my user was created with ID. So now if I go back to my browser, and I go to /API/users, plural to get all users, you see I have one user in there now. And then again, this is all that if I stop this service over here that's running right now, like the dev mode, it'll just wipe out everything and I'll lose it all. So this is, you don't want to. All right, so that's user and then users, and then same thing with events. So same thing with events. Again, it's document store, so I'm making the decision here to only store a city and state being posted in, but we could expand this and store the whole object. We can do whatever we want with it. It makes it really easy to add. So if you wanted to add, city, state, capacity, something like that, you could throw in anything you want to say about it.
Is that basically MongoDB?
It's very simple. So they all have like the same DNA, but they're different interfaces and slightly different rules. I think, I don't know if it's true, but I think Firestore came after real-time DB, yeah. So Firestore is like API is like near identical to real-time DB. The only difference is that real-time is real-time. So here's the API. So I'm going to go ahead and add. I'm going to skip this actually. I'm going to show you this on the real data, so I can show you the data tree browser running too. And then same thing. So this is now if I want to add an event, if I want to add a user to an event as an RSVP, the way the relationship will. So if this is SQL, you would have users. Because it's document store, basically underneath the event object, I've got a reservations object or an array of objects that has the reference to the user ID from the other collection. And I'll show you this in a second. And again, I know I talk fast, so don't be shy. Stop me if I'm going. Right? So this is all the node there is. So there's really less than 100 lines of code, and we have a fully functional, poorly architected, but fully functional REST API. The repo and run this locally. If you set up a Firebase account and turn this on, you can actually push this to your own site and play with it. All right, so how this works now, so here's the local. So this is where it gets a little weird. So if you have a traditional like CI/CD pipeline or something, and you're pushing this up, and you're letting it build in Jenkins and doing all these things and deploying out to building a Docker image, that whole pipeline theoretically can go away, especially if it's a small team or two. So this is all my code right now. This is the Orlando.js. I'm going to show you something real quick. I'm going to go ahead and kill this. This URL here is the one that Firebase gave me. So Firebase gave me this, when I set the project, Firebase gave me this URL here, the meet demo 14a Firebase app. And this is the API I have in the database right now. So if I go to the home page on this, I've got the Firebase hosting set up, and if I go to /API, I got that. So that here, this is the here that was there because I deployed that before, so before we got here. So the change I made, the here Orlando.js isn't there yet. So here's how complicated it is to deploy this. So here's my meet demo. You can see I even have my changes aren't even committed in Git, they're just there. So I'm gonna go ahead and do Firebase deploy. Should pursue deletion now. It wants to know if I want to delete the extra code in the package that I'm not using because it wants to be super efficient. I say no. Takes minutes deploying static assets too. I think this is the Wi-Fi issue, not the Firebase. All right, so it deployed. So now if I go back here, this is the same site, and I just refresh, here Orlando.js, it's up and running. What that looks like in the project, so I'm in the Firebase console here. I'm gonna go to the meet demo. Yep.
Did they version this? So
I was just gonna show that.
Make sure I have
So you can see when you're in the console, it shows you any of the usage. Let me go to storage, I'm sorry, not storage, hosting. So here's my hosting account, and you can see all of my deployments here. And so not only is it deployed, which I didn't actually have, it has 0 files deployed because I only modified a function. But if I need to, like, hey, that totally broke, I can just click here and roll back to this one if I want to, and done. So again, this doesn't say like get rid of your CI/CD pipeline, but if you want to have it just build and give your credentials to whatever the server is doing that, you can have that build after all your tests pass and all that. It just makes everything so much easier. I jokingly say, AWS is amazing. We live on it, but AWS is IKEA. Firebase is like Amazon prepackaged, stress-free shipping. It just gets there and it works. And, all right, so now onto the database. So any questions on the hosting part? Like I could throw a file up here and deploy, and regular HTML, everything else is just host. It's totally just a traditional box to stuff static files in. With database, so this is what I said. This, if you're familiar with document storage, this should be pretty straightforward. So you've got, this is the events collection, and these are the users collection. So in my events collection, I have a document for this event, which is an event in Orlando with RSVPs and a demo. Here's my users. So here's a food bar created. So just so you can see where this goes, I'm going to go ahead and create another user. And now we're going to see how many people are watching the live stream and screw with me. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and post to API users, and I'll say I want email equal to jimjones@aol.com, and boom. All right, so if I go back in here, this isn't real-time DB, so the UI doesn't do the cool flash update in front of you, but all right, so here's my users. Here's user 1, Fubar, and here's another user, Jim Jones. So I've got my users. And now I have an event, so let's go ahead and get. So if I go to API/users, I can see my Jim Jones and foobar. I'm going to grab Jim's ID. I'm going to go to events. So let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and add a new event. I'm going to create a demo 2 in Tampa. So in here, I'll go ahead and group to, so let's go API/events. I'm going to post data to, let's say, city. Events. So I've got an event in Tampa now with no RSVPs. And now I'm going to go ahead and create an RSVP. So I'm going to go to events. Sorry, the screen resolution is terrible. I don't know if you can see it. So I'm going to go ahead and post to Firebase events / this one, RSVPs. And I'm going to go ahead and add a user to it, which is going to be user ID equals Jim Jones. Okay, so here's my user ID, and I'm going to say his status is pending. All right, so hit that, and I probably hit events, RSVP, not RSVPs. So now if I go back and I refresh my things, I've got now a pending reservation for that user under this event. Again, this is totally free. I mean, to an extent, you can't run a gazillion things on it, but it's basically free. You don't need a whole infrastructure to do this. You don't need anything, and it's there. Any questions on this yet? Is this making sense? Anybody totally lost? We got time, so I can answer. I was going to jump into a React app, just to kind of bridge this with the real-time DB and everything else that goes with it. But, yep.
In the chat room, they're saying, so can you ask to elaborate on what a real-time DB, I guess, is, as opposed to a regular one?
Yes, I will do that in a second by showing you my app and giving you a good segue for a reason to expose my pet projects, because that's running on Firebase with real-time DB too. Yeah, go back.
Well, I don't know if you're going to cover these later, but you said before that if you're doing a web app or anything, usually you would use the SDKs. Like, what use cases would you go with this approach versus using the SDKs?
So, yeah, I have a couple apps. There's an app I wrote that I'll show in a minute. It's the pointing app I have, where it's totally front-end based. It just has the SDK. I want to throw some billing, like some account management and things into it. I'm using Firebase off to do that. But I want to have like a subscription model and some other things. So that kind of business logic I wouldn't store in the front end, obviously. So I'm going to create some functions to tie into a merchant process, but then have user statuses and those things. I need to be able to store and manage the user API on my own. So I kind of do this on that side for an internal stuff. But that would take the load off of the actual app itself. So, yep.
Can you use Firebase for a relational database?
I don't believe so, no. I could be wrong. I don't know of anything they offer that's relational. So. Which one? I'm sorry?
The RSP.
Yeah. Wait.
Yeah, I'm familiar with SQLize, and I just want to have an idea. Say if you want to list like events, and you have the RSP where you have the ID for the user, right?
Yeah.
What is the command? How do you know this? Who is this user?
Okay, so this gets a little weird. So this is cool, happy to go there. So with the database, so with Firestore, I'm gonna have to test. Basically, each document has an ID. So if I create a user and I don't give it an ID, Firebase is going to give me a generic one. One of the apps I actually use a UUID, which it's a little cleaner. So once you have that ID is refed to, so this document OKIX8 is part of events. That will always be event/OKIX8. That's its ID. Think of it like an incremental ID. So under RSVPs, you have this here, and so this user is always mapped to this user over here. There's two ways you can go about it. One way is actually, instead of creating just an ID like this, you can actually create a reference. So let's call it like a user. I'm going to say this is actually a reference here to users. I don't know the ID, but you basically say that's the user reference. So when you pull the data, you can actually inflate that user inside the response object. Yeah, that can get gnarly if you have like big O stuff where you've got like lots of references inside references. You could kill your system. Typically, what I do is in the other apps is I've got an endpoint to hit the user, so I can go backwards. So if I'm in an event and I've got 50. Where, so I can say like, go get me all the users where the ID is in this, and just limit those, and it'll give you back an array of user objects. The other thing you can do is, and I know I'm going to say this wrong, but you can add like 2 indexes, I think, on the Firestore. So you can basically say, give me all the events where RSVPs.key or .id is equal to this user ID, and it'll give you back the other way. There is limitation, and honestly, if you're going that deep where you hit that limitation, you probably want to re-architect it.
The user, this reference is going to be updated as well.
Yeah, I think it's a two-way binding. So if you hit that, it's really just hitting the original object. So. Yep. Any other questions on that so far? What time is it? It's 8 o'clock? Yeah. Anonymous one, but if anybody pulls that up, let me know.
Where are you going to post?
I think put it on the YouTube link.
I'm posting into the meetup also.
Okay. And while this is going, I'll pull up the point with me. So in this real-time DB, actually, you'll see it start going in a minute. So this is the document store for here. And there's tables. Apparently somebody's creating there. You'll see actually the table, even in the admin here, it updates in real time. So if anybody's in, let me know if you're already in. Can you see the Orlando.js table with a couple issues here? Anybody? No? And so go ahead and vote. You know how many points it is, there we go. And so now I'm gonna go ahead and lock the voting. I'm project manager and go ahead and show the votes, and all of your screens should be updating in real time right now. This is all web-based, React-based, Firebase real time.
There's no backend for this one.
I'm sorry?
There's no backend in this project.
There's no backend at all for this other than Firebase SDK. Including, it's both auth, DB, and hosting, so it's all under one package. And so if now that we're in here, I'm like on issue 1, I'm going to say, okay, well, now we're going to point to issue 2, then boom, and everybody should be looking at issue 2.
And let me ask you something.
Yeah.
How it works, for example, from end, I don't need to do anything. So for example, everything that I would just call a function, like that connects to the Firebase, and it will do automatically. Because it kinds of changes on the back end, and automatically.
Yeah, you mean for this? Yeah. So the way this works, you actually see my screen here. So go ahead and update your votes. Somebody click a vote or something. And you can see as every time somebody makes a change, it's updating in real time here. So that stream is going out to all the clients. How that works is, I'll pull this up too. So if I go to, so under my GitHub, here's a Point With Me app. So again, this is totally open. There's no testing. I know I'm a terrible engineer. This was just a pet project. So if I go into Firebase, so here's my Firebase component, and in here is the DB. So what this is doing is you're basically exporting a subscription to the table. So if you pass in that table ID, so it gets a subscription. Now I go to my poker table. So there's my poker table here. I'm basically setting a local state, nothing fancy. And then when open the auth without, I want to make sure I'm not so, and then with the auth here, I think I closed it. Firebase. Yeah, so you guys can see it. So you can see like people are logging in. I get this user ID for, let me just grab. You're sure this isn't live, right? Okay.
Yeah, no, it's
Okay. So like, here's a user ID over here, and then what that'll do is in the database. So under the poker tables, what I basically have is I have the table. I'm sorry, the user ID. So each user has a poker tables thing, and then has a table ID. So this user has control over everything under this tree, basically. And the way that works in here is,
Do they have a version control of the data yet also?
I'm sorry?
If you change something in the database, you have a version control on the previous?
I don't think so, no. There's backup, so you can set but yeah, I don't think there's a built in for that.
Much.
If there is, I'd be really curious, but there are transactional type ideas where you can do that, but that's only that for that one instance.
Let me know when you want to go back.
Yeah, I just want to pull this up real quick. Sorry, I got this. So here's the tables, and then, I was going to show the permissions. So you can go ahead and, let me just get out of the auth layer. Come out of there. Okay, yeah, you can go pull it up. So the way that works is then enter my Firebase rules, the database rules here. And this works for both Firestore and real time. So basically my project, as I'm saying, under poker tables, that index called UID, that document under there, UID, it's readable by everybody, but it's only writable if the auth ID of whoever's auth currently is matched to the UID. And then same thing for the votes. So the voting is per user, per table, and then, I'm sorry, the voting's table, and then the user. So under each table, I have votes for each user. And where I'm going to bridge this now is where you can, trying to keep identification private, especially when so we can keep the poker stuff actually anonymous. Yeah. Any questions on this yet? I know there's got to be some questions. I'm not that good of an explainer. So. Sorry?
My question is, when do you have time to do all this? You work by day, play by night?
And I have 3 kids.
Wow.
I like coffee, and I don't like to sleep. So, luckily, where I work, Oddball is an awesome company, and we're hiring DevOps people right now. There you think. You're welcome, Luke. We're fully remote. We have fairly flex time too. So there's some days where like I'll get up early and work on my own stuff until like 10 o'clock, and then I'll work on work until midnight or something. And I work on weekends at nights too, and morning. It's total segue. It's like a personal development thing too. I did a talk on ODevs like a year ago on this stuff. I make time for myself to do this, and I prioritize it, and it's like I have to spend at least half an hour to an hour a day bettering my engineering and stuff. I watch videos, I do tutorials, and like that's the first thing on my schedule, and everything goes around that. Otherwise, you get stagnant, and that's part of it. So, yeah.
So you do that first thing in the morning?
It depends on the day. I like to. Yep. Before my kids are there, I used to get up really early. Like I'd get up at like 5:30, 6, 4:30, 5:30, and do like an hour, go through emails and that kind of thing. My kids are up before me now a lot, so I can't really sneak away and get quiet time. But they go to bed by like 8, 9 o'clock, and then I'll go to my office and work for a couple hours, or play video games either way. But yeah. Or like I'll take like an hour lunch and do some learning on lunch break, and then I'll go back to work. And so it's just I work from home. It's really flexible. So granted, it's much easier than it sounds for some people, but yeah, you gotta prioritize your own learning and keep an eye on this stuff and keep pushing. Otherwise, you'll end up still working on a PHP 4 site somewhere. So, but all right. Any other questions? Yeah.
Do you used to work at Bookie?
I did. Oh shit! Hey. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I used to work at Bookit. Yeah. And I left Bookit to go work for another company. That was like 6 years ago.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, I remember you. I remember your face.
Oh.
I can't remember your name.
Oh, Sean.
John. Okay. Sorry.
On the front end team.
Yeah. Yeah.
So historically, like Firebase, a lot of people complain that it was good for like prototypes and all that, but not really for production. Where would you say they are right now in that area?
I don't know. I have yet to put something big on Firebase. I know there are, so I don't want to say like I haven't because I shouldn't. I know there are. I just couldn't say like, yeah, I know it can handle 1 million users and no problem. I assume it can. I just haven't done it myself. So I like Firebase because it's really easy and there's really low barrier of entry. It's kind of like a Heroku kind of thing where it just works and you push it, but this is free. But yeah, I do know there are some. I'll look up a link. I know there are some apps that are like touted, like Firebase, saying, "Hey, these guys are on us," and it's big ones. But I don't think there's any real reason not to. Even on their pricing tier, I think like their most expensive tier, something like $1,000 a month. It was like for 200 or 300,000 concurrent connections, and it was astronomical. So, but yeah. Nothing. Trying to extend it. All right.
Awesome, man. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Feel free to hang around. There's still more subs. Yeah, awesome. And again, we're not going to have a meetup in December, but we'll be back in January with the framework course that we talked about. So if anybody, is interested in presenting and